Good day. Our quality of relationships is our subject to talk about today, because interpersonal communication is relationships are highly dependent on our ability to communicate interpersonally with others. Today's discussion will surround the nature of relationships, how to form those relationships, stages of the relationships, and the differences amongst a variety of different types of relationships. When we talk about Bronfenbrenner's social circles, we'll see that relationships and the word relationship has a social definition which is different than the definition we're going to use today. Our definition of relationship boils down to any interpersonal communication between one and another, or one and many others, or many others and many other others. So what is a relationship? It's a connection, association. It can be platonic, meaning there's nothing physical. It can be interdependent, meaning in order to accomplish the goal of the relationship, it requires each, other, and both. And there also can be intimacy, which includes personal contact. So how do we categorize our relationships? Generally, it's based upon the length of that relationship. It can be short-term or long, the frequency of contact, what we share and how often, and the level of support, interaction, and goals expectation, what we are going to accomplish. Now, what we need to know, though, is that a relationship is about support, encouragement, and validation only. We are not talking about anything outside of these three terms: support, encouragement, and validation. So, demeaning behavior, judgment, and other negative influences are not within the definition of a relationship. Those are other influences that we won't be talking about because they aren't included effectively in what a relationship actually is. We might be able to rate our relationships on the level of support, the level of encouragement, and the level of validation. But the level of validation would not include invalidation. The level of support would not include anything demeaning or judgmental, for instance. Relationships can be anything within our circles of support: work, task, social. What makes a relationship a 1 versus a 3? Meaning and benefit. Allows people to grow psychologically, emotionally, and physically. Allows people to grow is the purpose of a relationship. So a relationship that we would rate a 1 would allow a person to grow in deeper ways, psychologically or emotionally or physically, than one that is a 3. So how does attraction get involved? Well, what is the purpose of attraction first? Is attraction a relationship? Have to answer that, but what attraction is physical proximity and the pair bonding that comes from that physical proximity. Pair bonding is the release of oxytocin in order to connect two beings together. It does not mean that the relationship is supportive, validating, and encouraging. It just means there's a chemical bond based upon physical attractiveness, which generally is for the purpose of preserving likenesses, ethnicities, and culture. Short-lived, but has a purpose. So how do we figure out risks in a relationship? Other reasons to be attracted: perceived gain. This goes to exchange theory. Exchange theory is what Jean-Paul Sartre, in the theory of existentialism, calls objectification. Exchange theory means that there is a reward, not always just financial, but a reward that comes from either tangible or intangible exchange of energy in a relationship. Good relationships might have fewer costs and more reward. Bad relationships have more costs and fewer rewards. Conflicts with the theory of relationship from a support, encouragement, and validation perspective, because it brings in the negative. Consider the alternatives to a relationship, which is anxiety or loneliness. Well, the problem therein is if we're considering accepting of objectification relationship in order to avoid anxiety and loneliness, then we are accepting that there is a different definition to the word relationship than what we're here to talk about today. We're including the objectification piece, which is to be avoided. Other reasons for attraction has to do with fixed thinking. So what we're comfortable with from our childhood development, similarities, which create validation of who we are from a cultural, ethnic, and religious background perspective. Does that mean a relationship is going to be solid, supportive, encouraging, and validating because we share religious backgrounds? Open question. May or may not. The idea is always to develop trust between one and another, one and the group and another group. The trust needs to be mutual and appropriate. So a mutual and appropriate trusting relationship then goes deeper than the attraction that may have incepted that relationship. So how do relationships start? Well, relationships start by a continuum of initiating, showing interest, experimenting in talks with, is this in alignment with our expectation? This could be in alignment with our fixed patterns of attraction, or it could be in alignment with our needs for growth from having moved up the Maslow pyramid to a level of actualization in which we're looking to grow from experimenting with our relationships in certain directions. For instance, what if we are seeking to cultivate more relationships that include physical exercise? For instance, sports, equestrian, gym. Well, we might introduce others or groups that are gym goers in order to actualize that arena within our personhood. As we find that going to the gym is effective or equestrian, then we would intensify those relationships if they are supportive, encouraging, and validating towards our goals or our aims. And then we would integrate those into our life and our personality. And once integrated, it forms a relationship bond that goes far deeper and beyond the idea of attraction, which was limiting. How do relationships end? Well, relationships end by a logical decline in how they came together. If this takes 2 years, the decline in the relationship may not. Because if in a differentiating stage we find that there's no longer an alignment of identities, that the communication will decrease. The relationship becomes less supportive. Maybe the rating on the Bronfenbrenner scale is no longer a 1, became a 2, then became a 3, and then was replaced or avoided and starts to terminate as time goes on. Logical, normal, happens regularly, happens in most relationships. How do we maintain a relationship, you might ask? Because if the norm is decline, we may seek to avoid that. Well, we can use strategies. And the strategies might be to keep an alignment between the relationship and the experiences so that both parties continue to grow together. Requires a conscious effort to balance. Now, what happens in most cases is people avoid the natural decline of the relationship because it became a fixed pattern. And fixed patterns, as we know, become difficult to move from into further growth in order to protect the species, the ethnicity, and the culture. But to create a balance strategy is a maintenance relationship, and as well as direct strategies such as negotiation to see if both parties have the same goals to communicate effectively. So maintenance relationships require positive influence, meaning the openness of positivity, assurances that build trust, that are not manipulative, to willingness to share in time and tasks and resources, and social networks, conflict management skills, and maybe getting advice from therapists. Why is it important to maintain relationships? Mostly has to do with the investment in that relationship, in which that replacing it would be work that might take a couple of years. But if the relationship is not repairable back to the level of support that it once was as a result of both parties not equaling benefit and too much sacrifice, then it is logical that the resources being placed into that relationship are not necessarily in an advancing mode, but are in a declining mode. But maintenance behaviors can be independent or in conjunction with each other in order to attempt the goal of not breaking the fixed pattern of behavior which is intertwined in that relationship. It is important to break here and do a Socratic seminar on when is it important to maintain a relationship and how do we discern when that relationship is no longer possible to maintain mutually, effectively, from equal benefits, and the sacrifice is too great. So we are going to break into a Socratic seminar in order to discuss this construct.